Hello, and thanks for joining me tonight for this live stream. I'm going to be continuing on with my portrait painting of Stephen Hawking using Corel Painter 2018 and a Wacom Cintiq 27 QHD Touch. And if you don't know who I am, I'm digital artist Aaron Rutten. It is my goal to help you enjoy digital art and learn some new skills along the way. So let's go ahead and hop over to Corel Painter here. Mary McCarthy's here. Good to see you, Mary. Minu's here, Kelly's here. Kelly says, hi, I love your art. Thank you, Kelly, much appreciated. Tayden's here. So, I haven't worked on this for a while. I think I'm about 7 hours into it or so. Still got a ways to go. So I'll just keep on working on it here. Got to take a second to wrap my head around what I want to do. Looking at my reference photo, trying to figure out what needs the most work. So everything is pretty well fleshed out, I would say. So maybe I'm getting more into like needing to do textures and stuff like that. I think that's the case. So we'll start there. I might actually, really quickly before I do that, do a little work on the hair. I see a couple spots that I would like to fix. The brush that I'm using, that I've been using for most of this painting, is called the Smooth Palette Knife. It works really well for hair and skin and all kinds of stuff. It's a very versatile brush. Okay, there needs to be a bit of a shadow, so I'm going to put that in. I might actually cool it down a bit. And that shadow I want to be underneath the headrest. No, actually I don't. I want the headrest to cut out of it. See, my layering of my layers is a little bit odd here. Well, not quite what I wanted, but I'll just have to kind of paint right up to the edge there, just because of the way that I layered everything. I'll actually put that above the fine hair. There we go. Nice shadow from the headrest. See, it's interesting. You really have to give it. You really have to give portraits time, because you have to be able to focus on all these details. And sometimes you don't see the details initially. Sometimes it takes a while for them to show up or to become apparent to you. Okay, and if that's too strong, I can reduce the opacity of it just a bit. I'll go with something kind of like that. Just name that layer so that I know what it is. Actually, I should have popped myself out here. So I'm going to be recording this so that I can make a speed painting of it later. The one thing I do notice is that there are some palettes not showing up. That's not good. Oh, there I've gone and broken it. Let's see here. Let's see if I can fix this. It's very odd. This is technical difficulties here. Oh well, I guess I'll just have to make do. It's weird. There's palettes that are not showing up over here. I can see them, but they're not showing up in the stream. So really not a big deal for the live stream, but for my recording that I want to make of this, I want to be able to see all that stuff. So I don't know what to do about that. Let's see. There we go. I got it. Sweet. I had to uncheck exclusive window capture and XSplit. Okay. Everything's cool. Here I go. Let's see here. Minu says your art's really nice. Thank you, Minu. Jimmy's here. Good to see you, Jimmy. Angus said you inspired me to do digital art. That's awesome, Angus. Glad to hear that. Paul Andre said, hey Aaron, what's your machine? If you're referring to my computer, it is a Intel i7 6800K processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM, MSI motherboard, EVGA GTX 1080 video card. I guess those are really the important specs. So let's see, what else? This is the tricky thing. Like when I was live streaming the earlier parts of this, it was actually not really a big deal because, you know, when I'm blocking it out and I'm doing the majority of the work, I can actually show something. But in reality, when I'm doing paintings like this, I'll really take my time, and as you get toward the end, you can't really rush through it. It's not like you can just be like, oh, okay, you know, I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go there. They're very, very fine details that you have to focus on, so maybe we'll focus on the chin down here, and trying to get that a little bit more detailed. So that is on the face layer. Always good to organize your layers and to name them. So we have the shadow that kind of comes down here a bit from this fold in the skin. A little bit more over there. And if you don't look at just this one area here, you don't notice this stuff. You think you know what people look like, and then you find out you were wrong. Or you just weren't as right as you thought you would be. And this is all you have to pay attention to, is just one little area, and it makes it a lot less overwhelming. When you're thinking about the whole painting and finishing the whole thing, it can be very, very overwhelming. If you just take your time, give it time to let itself finish, and you'll do all right. You know, I haven't rushed through this. I've spent quite a bit of time on this portrait. It's taking a lot longer than a lot of the paintings that I usually do, because I want it to look good. This should actually be a bit more brown. And then down here it starts to get kind of light. Nice rim highlight right here. Just a bit of an edge along the side of the face there as well, just to help that stand out. And then the shadow needs to be deeper here underneath the chin. And underneath the neck there. So I'm kind of being a little bit loose about this because I know I'm going to go through now with my blender and I can blend it up, help kind of smooth together these colors. Blending is so important in art, or in painting I should say. It doesn't have to be, there's all kinds of different ways of painting, but I just find that those art applications out there that don't have decent blenders, or even blenders at all, that's just ridiculous. I don't know how you can call yourself a painting application if you don't have any blenders. Because you can still blend color, you can build up opacity and stuff, but that's just so much more tedious than just having a blender to begin with. And then having a variety of blenders, that's nice too, because there isn't just one way of blending. Gonna zoom out, take a look at what I did. If it's a bit too dark, which it very likely is, because I have a habit of doing that, I can just use my airbrush to just take it back a bit, take it down a notch. I think I'll get some of the shirt color, so the neck is reflective. Pinch it up a little bit in a couple places. Just got to focus on these little details. Okay, let's blend that some more. I'm going to go to the edge of the face here. I'm going to turn off preserve transparency. Just shave off a bit of that paint. It's looking better. I'm going to go ahead and save my progress, even though all I've done is paint like one small 2-inch section of a neck and a shadow on the hair. Always got to save that progress. Metalman 2K is here, says great painting, thank you Metalman. Twan's here, good to see you Twan. Okay. So now I think I'll take a break from the face. I've spent so much time on that. And I might add in a little bit of texture to some stuff. So in my reference photo, the reference photo I chose was a screen capture of a documentary that Stephen Hawking is in. So it's not very good quality. Like, you can't really see texture. At least, well, not on the headrest. I know it's there. I know it's some sort of fabric. So I find my headrest layer here. Select layer content, create a new layer. Call it headrest text for short for texture. Make that a multiply composite method. And then I'm going to try random chalk. Sample this color from my headrest. And that's a bit too strong, so I think I will just go with regular chalk. And I'm going to try this gessoed canvas. Okay, I will do random chalk, but I'll do it with gessoed canvas. I'm going to zoom in more closely here too so you can see what I'm doing. And reduce the scale. And what I'm getting is something that looks like kind of a fabric texture. Now, if I'm wrong about that being fabric, then I'll just have to deal with being wrong. I think that's pretty nice. So now I'm going to go ahead and just rotate the angle. Put some more down, that way it's not a pattern all going the same direction. And then of course we want a new layer. Call it headrest. Light. This will be a screen composite method. And I can put in some lighter texture. I tell you though, this Corel Painter that I'm using here is a really great painting application. This random green really helps to randomize the patterns that you get with your texture, so it's not a uniform pattern. In doing that, you get a lot of randomization. And randomization is really what makes digital art look good. If everything's too digital, too predictable, too consistent, too perfect, it just looks digital and it just doesn't look good. But if you can get it to look random and organic, like traditional media, then you're onto something. Alright, zoom back out. Now that darkened things quite a bit. So what I will do is I will reduce the opacity of that texture. I just want it to be kind of subtle. That looks good. So I can do that same thing on the suit too. I'll probably want to use a different texture though. So suit coat background is this area over here on the right side. Call that SCBG text, that way I know what it is. Set that to multiply. And I want that same random chalk. I need a different pattern. Let's try Artist Canvas. It's kind of a nice woven pattern. So I'm going to use a big brush and try to use kind of lighter pressure. That looks kind of nice. I'll zoom in so you can see that. And then I want to find the suit on the other side. I'm going to use a really big brush this time. So I want to make sure my coverage is nice and even. Just reduce the opacity. Do that on the other side as well. Add in some lighter color. I've got a ton of layers now. I guess it's not really a ton. It's quite a few layers. Sometimes I have many, many more than that. Enzo says Aaron Rutten. You know what, Enzo? I've never heard that. You're the first person to ever be clever enough to call me Aaron Rutten. It's weird because you'd think after 34 years of having the last name Rutten, somebody would have come up with that by now, but that's strange. So you get a medal or some sort of award for being so clever. I'll give that to you in a minute here. F. Lingle is here, says maybe the head rust is Magellite. I have no idea what that is. Perhaps you could clarify. Good to see you, by the way, one of my Patreon supporters. And I'll answer Paul's question here. They want to know my opinion about choosing the right computer for digital art. PC or Mac, laptop or desktop. Well, definitely PC. Macs aren't any better. If you're used to Mac, you might find it easier to use, but there's all this hype that Mac is better, and it's really not. A computer with faster specs is going to be a better computer, so obviously if you have a slower, Windows computer, then a Mac will be better if it's faster, but the operating system doesn't matter. I think there's a lot of advantages to working on Windows rather than Mac. Desktop or laptop, that's pretty easy. Desktop's going to be more powerful and you'll be able to upgrade it much more easily, so that's what I would do. However, if you want something that's portable, then a laptop's a good option. And then the right specs, you might go to my go to kit.com/Aaron Rutten. There should be a link in the description of this video, and if you look under computers, I have a whole bunch of computers. They're already pre-built computers. You could get one of those if you wanted to. They should be pretty good for digital painting. I don't know that they're like the absolute newest models because I haven't updated it in a little while, but it would give you an idea of some of the specs that you would want to get. I also have a PDF about optimizing your computer for digital art. Trying to think of where you would find that. If you go on my website, aaronrutten.com, then up in the top under Learning, there ought to be an articles section, and I think you can actually find it under there. And that'll give you a whole description of all the different parts and how they work and how they contribute to making your computer faster for digital painting. So that ought to set you up pretty well. And I need to set this layer to screen. Can't tell if this is even doing anything. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Okay, I need to paint over here. Nope. Okay, so I have the wrong selection and I'm on the wrong layer. Double mess up. Okay, here we go. Now it's going to show up. So just putting in a little bit of that light color. I will do that on the other side as well. See, even with naming layers, it can be tricky to find what you're looking for. Just imagine how hard it would be to figure out what I'm doing if I hadn't named any of these layers. And people do that. People work that way. I don't know how they do it. F. Lingle says, Magellite is synthetic leather found in high-end car interiors, yachts. Definitely could be. And in that case, I would want to use a different texture. But from a distance, I mean, really anything that's kind of grainy is going to do the trick. Guess it all depends on how Stephen Hawking felt about leather. I don't know if he was a vegetarian or not. Or a vegan even. Very well might have been. And in that case, he might not want leather components. There's me trying to highlight that edge, which actually really is not highlighted at all in the reference photo, but I keep trying to do it anyways. I talk about this all the time, but you really have to fight against your urge to try to paint things as you see them, unless you want to do it that way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having artistic license and seeing something your own way through your own lens, but if you're going for photorealism or accuracy, then you have to fight against seeing things the way that you imagine them and draw them the way that they are in the reference photo. It doesn't sound like it's that difficult, but it can be. Now I'm just paying very careful attention to smaller areas here in the jacket. I'm going to try my best to keep the texture separate from the suit coat. Okay, it's starting to come together. And what can be helpful when you feel like you're not making a whole lot of progress is to just evaluate your progress. So I will do that here in just a minute. So here's the version before I started to do anything. And then here's my changes. So before, after, before, after. So a little bit of work on the neck, some texture for the headrest, texture for the jacket. That layer of texture adds quite a bit of realism to it. So I'll go ahead and save my progress by going to Save As. I'll just catch up on some comments here. Metalman says, Aaron, I love to draw. I have Corel Painter X 2017 and 2018. I also have Art Rage 4.5 Krita, PaintStorm Studio, Photoshop, Sketchbook Pro 7, Paint Tool Sci, and I still can't seem to draw anything. Well, maybe it's not software that's the issue, you know, or, well, let me backtrack a bit. Maybe you're too focused on software, and maybe you're not giving any one of those applications enough time and enough dedication and enough focus to be able to overcome the hump of just being able to use the application. And then beyond that, once you get comfortable in an application, then it's just about practice and learning techniques and more practicing and more drawing and, you know, developing your style and things like that. All that stuff takes a long time, but if the software is getting in the way and you're not able to focus on one piece of software, you know, that could be the issue getting in the way of everything else. So I would start there. You know, I would maybe spend some time figuring out which application is working best for you, which one is least frustrating for you. That's kind of how that's kind of how I landed on Corel Painter. Corel Painter was the least frustrating, and it had the most it had all the features that I want. And occasionally I might use another application like Photoshop or Rebel or any of these other applications and work back and forth between Corel Painter and other applications. And it's great that you can do that, but I'll do most of my work in Corel Painter. Once you get really, really comfortable with the application, then you can start to develop your own techniques. You know, how do you paint? How many layers do you use? What style do you use? Do you do line art first? Do you do mostly painting? And then as you start to develop your own techniques and your own style, then you can focus on learning how to master certain elements of art. And Middleman also wants to know any suggestions on how to kickstart my art. Well, I would start with my suggestions there, and then once you kind of get a little more comfortable, then you just got to go for the inspiration. And I could talk all day about inspiration, but what would be easier is if you check my channel for, just do a search for inspiration. I actually have a video, probably a couple of videos, that go over a bunch of different ideas of how you can get inspired. Middleman says, thanks so much, Aaron. Wise words. You're very welcome. So I'll continue on here, figure out what to do next. I'm going to go back to the skin. There's a few areas that could be sharper. Might even do a little bit of texture on the skin. Same way I did it for the clothes, just with a different, I guess it's not exactly the same, but multiply layer. But I want something a little more fractal. And then what do you have under your, or what is skin texture? It's blood vessels, it's skin cells, it's freckles, it's blemishes. So that's your texture. And that's what you draw in, and that's what you get. Now obviously this is, you know, I'm overpainting this here for good reason, because I know that I'm going to go in and back it down a bit. So we got red, that's in our skin, but we also have some blue blood. So we want a little bit of blue as well. Now I can make my brush really big, and that might make it easier just to get more even covering here. It's starting to look pretty weird now. Whoever's tuning in right now is like, what the heck is going on here? Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. So when you reduce the opacity, and it starts to make sense, then I don't look as crazy. But see what that does? That adds a lot of nice texture under the skin. And we can keep going with that. We can create another layer. Call it brown. Multiply. Maybe this is going to be freckles or something of that nature. I'm going to reduce the scale of that worn pavement too. Add some nice texture, but we don't want it to be covering everything so evenly. So what we can do is just blend it a bit. Blending it kind of softens it up, makes it a little less harsh. Using pretty light pressure here when I'm blending. So we'll group all of those texture layers together. We'll just call this group skin texture. Now let's see exactly what that did. I'll zoom in real close too so you can see it here. So this is with the texture, this is without the texture. Baby smooth, not so baby smooth. And it's still too much texture. It's a little too crispy. So I will go ahead and just probably back that down a bit more. I'm just blending just to knock it back. This can work really well for like stubble and stuff too. And just kind of see how it's doing. That's working pretty well. Some areas of the skin here that I want to blend underneath all of that. So far, so good. I want to add some texture to the shirt now. We don't want to forget about that. I'm going to go ahead and save my progress. I'll just catch up on comments here. F. Langle says that I had trouble with software. I was afraid of Clip Studio Paint. Eventually I found another program I was more terrified of. I worked my way through a few books. Yeah, you have been trying a lot of different programs, and I think that's a really important first step, is trying all the different applications, because there's so many out there, and no one can really say that one is better than another, because it all comes down to the artist and their own needs and their art style and all that. I happen to have my favorite. I have several favorites actually, but I have my one that I really like to use and I recommend the most. But I also recommend that people experiment and see what's out there. And in doing that, you will find your art application. Everyone has something that works for them, and sometimes it doesn't work for other people. But once you find that, then you can start focusing on all the other stuff. It can be like that with traditional media too. You have to experiment with watercolor and oil and acrylic and all these different media to be able to get a feel for what it is that works for you. If it's really, really frustrating beyond reason, like there's a reasonable amount of frustration to encounter. But if it's really, really frustrating, try something else, and you might find that another application is less frustrating. Less frustration, I think, leads to more fun and more progress. F. Langle says, interesting technique, referring to the blood vessel layers. And that's how you have to break everything down. I'll pop in for a minute here, because I'm this mystery voice talking in the darkness. You have to break everything down, not just the shape, not just the primitive forms, not just the color, and not even just texture as a whole, but really think about all of the different components that make up the object that you're trying to paint. If you can't do that, it's going to be very, very hard. You're going to be looking at something and you won't even know where to start. But the more you can really analyze something down to like what makes, I don't think you have to get into like molecular cell biology to understand how cells work in the face. You don't have to go that deep into it. You don't have to know how molecules work, or enzymes or proteins or any of that stuff. But the overall structures on at least a very like microscopic level, down to what you can see with the naked eye, I guess. And then beyond that, don't really worry about it. But at least have some idea of kind of what makes things look a certain way. A good analogy is like butterfly wings are really bright, bold, beautiful colors, but they don't actually have any pigment. It's the arrangement of molecules or the construction of atoms that makes the light react in a certain way, that causes diffraction and different things and makes you see color even though the wings themselves do not have pigment. So sometimes things can look a certain way for reasons that at first you don't understand, but once you do understand why it works that way, then it's super obvious. It's like, okay, well, how do I get skin texture? Well, what is skin texture? It's skin cells, blemishes, blood vessels, all the stuff I mentioned earlier. You put those things on layer by layer, one by one. Keep them separate as layers, because then that way, if you don't like the skin texture, you don't have to start over on the face. I didn't ruin the face by doing this step. I can do this and I can decide if I like it. If I look at this later and I'm like, wow, that's way too much texture, I can reduce some of it. So layers are your friend. Okay, I'm going away again. So I'm going to take a minute to think about what I'm going to do after this shirt. Probably will do the shirt, and then I'll work on the hair a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to encourage you to do one of two things. If you're enjoying this live stream and all these free videos that I put out each week, all the tips that I share, there's a little super chat button down at the bottom of the chat. It's a little $sign. And if you have a spare dollar, go ahead and send that my way. Because artists got to make a living too, and it's more motivation for me to do more of these live streams. It makes me feel appreciated. It gives me mojo. Or you can be cool like F. Lingle here, and possibly some other people watching, and you can join my Patreon community. And my Patreon community is a whole bunch of really awesome people who have really made a huge difference in improving the quality of my channel. They've allowed me to have more time to make art full-time and to make these videos by providing me with a budget that I can use to, you know, go and paint on location or buy new gear or just be able to afford to make videos. But you also get to be part of a community, a really fun private community, and you get access to all kinds of really cool stuff that's not available to the general public, like early releases of my new videos, coupons to save on my courses, new brushes each month. There's a whole bunch of stuff. If there's any patrons out there who want to just quickly list off maybe one of their favorite things on Patreon, that would be cool. There should be a link in the video description, patreon.com/Aaron Rutten. I promise I will get right back to drawing here. It's good to take little breaks here and there, because you get burned out. I've had so much going on this month, trying to do videos, and I'm in the middle of making a course. The course is actually, the painting's already complete. The videos are already done. I just have to edit the videos, which takes a lot of time. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Okay, so shirt texture. Let's see if we can do that fairly quickly. I'm gonna group some of these layers. Just because it's getting a little cluttered here. It feels good to tidy up too sometimes. I still have a sketch here. Why I still have it, I don't know. I'm just going to delete that. That doesn't need to be there. Let's see, headrest. We can group all of these together. Okay. So, shirt. Where's the shirt that I'm looking for? Not that one. And I just say how easy it is to find what you're looking for when you arrange your layers. Oh, here it is. It's on top of everything. Shirt. Why didn't I see it up there? Good old shirt. So I'm going to group shirt and get a selection of it. So going back to working with software enough to be able to get comfortable with it, before I started making videos, what I was doing was I was trying to figure out like how do I paint? Not necessarily what do I paint or how do I get better at painting, but what techniques, what brushes do I use? You know, like these tricks that I use, like select layer content, create a new layer, set it to multiply, paint blood vessels, use this brush. All these are things that I've done many times, and I've perfected each of those steps to the point to where it's just as efficient as it can be. So it took all that experimentation for me to get comfortable and for me to be able to work quickly like this. I know I'm in some ways being a little slow and taking my time here, but you know, if you've seen me blaze through paintings, it's like I know all the steps ahead of time. I have them memorized because, well, they are memorized. I'm going to do linen canvas this time for the texture. And I'm going to use Random chalk. Big brush. I think that's not quite dark enough. And I think the texture is not quite fine enough. Not quite what I want. I think the threading would be probably a bit too fine on this. So I'm thinking maybe I will not add texture in that way. Let's see if there's another way we can do it to where it'll make more sense. We could use a pixel spray like this. I think that actually looks kind of nice. Reduce the opacity of that, and that just adds a subtle texture, almost a grain. Just decide whether or not I like that. I think I do. I think I'll keep it for now. So now to move on to the hair. So I have fine hair. These are little individual hairs, and then I have my main hair. I'm going to do just another hair layer. Call it hair over, for lack of a better name. And then just try to draw in more definition in the hair here. Oops, don't want my brush to be too big. I'm just sampling back and forth between these different colors here. So I want the hair to kind of overlap itself. It shouldn't be all going the same direction. That would not be good. That's one of the worst things you can do to hair, is have it look flat. You really have to kind of, just like the blood vessels on the face and all that stuff, you have to really understand hair too. It's all about observation, and people are always talking about observation. I always say observation is not just looking at something, it's understanding it, or attempting to understand it by looking at it. I don't think I've ever really said it that way, but that's the gist of it. You know, it takes a certain amount of attention. It takes a certain amount of interest to be able to observe. You have to be interested in it, because you can put all kinds of stuff in front of me that I just don't care about, and maybe it's important stuff too. It would be really great to be able to understand mathematics in such a way to where I could calculate a formula that would help me price my courses at the optimal price. You know, like, there's all these different formulas and calculations you can do, and unfortunately for me, instead of paying attention to that stuff in school, I was drawing like my own comic books and doodling, and so I suffer for that now. I'm not competent in some ways. And most people aren't competent enough in mathematics to be able to make their own formulas. You know, you have to be pretty into math. You have to be as into math as I'm into art to be able to do that kind of stuff. But it would be pretty cool if I could do that stuff. But I can't. I don't have the interest. It bores me. I look at it and I'm just like, I don't want to look at this stuff. I don't want to learn this. I mean, I kind of have an interest. It would be cool to know it, but I don't want to dedicate the time or the effort to do it. That's boring. So I don't. Maybe someday, though. Never say never. I had that attitude about music for the longest time. Like, I didn't grow up in a musical household. I didn't take, technically I took maybe 2 piano lessons or something, but that at the time really bored me, at least the way they were teaching it. So I just assumed I'll never be able to play an instrument because I didn't grow up with instruments, and it would take me forever to learn that. But you know what? Piano interested me enough to where I wanted to learn it, and I dedicated years and years and years and a lot of practice to figuring it out myself in a way that interested me and kept me involved in it. And eventually I learned how to play piano, and by no means am I like a virtuoso on piano. I'm not. There's a lot of stuff I can't do on piano, but what I can do I'm satisfied with, and it's enough for me to get by. And if I'd have stuck with that attitude, like I'll never be able to do it because of my own made-up reason, then of course I'd never be able to do it. But then there's some things that just, going back to difficulty, like I also really wanted to play guitar, and I've tried that off and on periodically, and just really never had much luck with that. But I've also not put in as much time and effort and dedication as I have into playing piano. So learning is a lot about being interested in something, and if you're not interested in it, it's really hard to learn it. And I kind of wish in school, to some degree, like there's a lot of stuff that I needed to know, and I'm glad that I learned it, but it would have been nice to have gone to an alternative school or something where they would have nurtured the artistic side of me more. Not to say that, that would have been just a way to get out of doing math and stuff, but that would have been kind of cool if they were like, hey, this is obviously something you're really interested in. If that's the kind of career path that you want to pursue later in life, and if you're pretty set on wanting to do that, we'll encourage you to do that. But that's not how it worked at my school. It was like, do your homework, do your work, don't draw in class. And I did it anyways. And a lot of the artists that I talk to are kind of the same way. It's that compulsion to make art. Some people have it, some people don't. But see, I'm just kind of just talking and just drawing hair, and I'm spending a lot of time on it. And that's what's making it look like hair. Time, focus. I think I may have made it a bit too dark. I may have overdone it. But all this stuff I added is on a layer, so if I decide I really messed it up and I don't like it, I can get rid of it. So I think the problem is it's just a bit too dark. So let's brighten it up a bit. That's better. It's getting better. And you know what? For some things, like hair can be a lot of different ways. So, you know, for the most part, I want to get the gist of how the hair looks in the reference photo, like the color and the direction it's going, the length and the texture, and all of its characteristics that make it obvious that it's Stephen Hawking's hair. But beyond that, if I want to kind of clean it up and make it look a little more stylized, or, you know, like, it doesn't have to be exactly like the reference photo. So if it ends up looking a bit different, that just makes it look more artistic. Okay, time to zoom out. What I want to do now is kind of, there's some areas, let's see here. Okay, that fixed it. There was a bit of a halo along the edge, and I just changed the composite method to gel cover, and that fixed it, so never mind. Yeah, much better. Much better. I'm just trying to find the right layer here. Kind of trying to make the edges between the hair and the skin just a little bit more seamless. So I'm trying to just put some of the hair color blending kind of into that. I just gotta find the right layer though. That would be this layer here. There we go. Zoom back out again. Sometimes if you zoom really far out, you can really get a feel for how you're doing. I'm going to save my progress again. So right now I'm at 29 different iterations. F. Lingle says, missed the composite method. I changed it to gel cover. So I'll just really quickly show you, just because I know you're kind of new to Painter. Painter has this quirk that other art applications don't. And it has to do with blending. So I'm going to put down this red blob here. I'm going to blur it with diffuse blur, or blend it. When you blend it, because older, very, very ancient versions of Painter tried to make the paint blend more realistically by kind of having it blend with white. But as Painter got more advanced and people started to use more layers, what you would expect to get is transparent pixels, not white pixels. So still blending, that would look nice, but it shouldn't get lighter. It should blend with the color underneath, even if it's on a separate layer. So what you do is you change the composite method to gel cover, and then there you go. That white essentially turns into transparent. Now, if your ball was a white ball, you know, if I take the color white and I paint a ball, then gel cover, well, I guess it works the same. So I don't know what the magic is with gel cover, but somehow it makes white go away on the edges, but it doesn't completely get rid of white. So, you know, like if I used a multiply, I would get kind of the same effect. It would make white disappear essentially, but then it would blend darker with the background, and then it of course made that white go away entirely up at the top. So gel cover is magic. Not all blenders will do that. Some of the newer blenders don't. They have what's called enhanced layer blending. Mary's going to bed. Good night, Mary. It's great to see you. F. Lingle says, I grew up in an artistic family. Father was an artist, my mother was a writer, an uncle was a jazz musician, another one was a composer, but I rebelled and went into math. A mistake in retrospect. Well, you know, it sounds like art's kind of more your thing than math. Sometimes you get pressured in by yourself or by other people to do, you know, you were talking about like your dad wanted to be a fine artist and he ended up taking the safe route and became a commercial artist. Sometimes that's just what you have to do. You don't always have to do it. Sometimes you have the option to, you know, to do something else, but or maybe it was rebelling, as you said, and it wasn't so much, you know, making the safe choice. But either way, it's not too late to get into art. You know, there's so many of my students are getting into art, and they're my parents' age or my grandparents' age, and they make great art. You know, there's your Grandma Moses who started making art in her 80s, so. What's better is when you're older, sometimes you got more time too. I actually don't know how old you are, so I shouldn't be assuming anything. You very well could be younger than me. So let's see, what else? Thinking I'm getting pretty close to doing just finishing touches at this point. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe do a couple more tweaks to this. Let's see. I see something here. I don't want to dilly-dally too much and not be doing anything, and that's actually kind of the phase I'm at now, where I need to take the time to observe. I'm not going to do that quite as strong. I'm going to back that up a bit. Just make the edge pop a bit there. I'm painting kind of with the edge of the brush, just so I get kind of a bit of color that just spills over. I'm going to save my progress by going to Save As. Alright, now I'm at about 30. I don't get too much beyond 30 or so saves. Usually around that time I'm kind of getting near the end of the painting. I'm trying to think of how far I've gone. I've probably gone beyond 30, but I don't know for a fact. I'll have to look and see if there's anything that I've saved more than about 30 times. I don't really spend a whole lot of time on work, you know, like, I know there's artists out there who will spend months and years on stuff, but for me, in my line of work, I need to be able to make more than one painting a month, more than one painting a year. So, you know, I could spend months or years on Stephen Hawking here and it would look that much better, but how much better would it look? You start to get into that diminishing returns zone where, you know, right now this might be 70% accurate, you know, and to get it to 80 or 90 could take many more hours. F. Lingle says 30 iterations. That reminds me I need a backup device. So what I'm going to do now, I'm feeling kind of like I'm just done working on this tonight, but I'm not done live streaming. I still feel like I want to live stream. So I'm going to just stop working on this and I'm going to just start on something else. Maybe just do some drawing just for the sake of drawing. Let's also do this real quick though. Before I do that, let's recap and just see what I did. See the progress that I made. So this is before I did anything. Oops, let me just get rid of it. It's going to be hard to do it before and after with this canvas here. Okay. Before, baby soft skin. After, gristly old man skin. So what a difference that makes. And then the hair, you know, the hair already looked kind of okay, but now it looks better, I think. It's more messy and kind of overlapping on itself. It's not like all the hair in the earlier version. See how it's kind of curving over and going the same direction? It's almost too perfectly smoothed. Whereas now there's some hairs kind of tumbling over one another. The hair still needs work, but that's a major improvement. And the textures on everything, those are kind of subtle. You probably won't really notice those very much, but yeah, made some pretty good progress there. Okay, fresh canvas. So I'm going to take a minute to pop in, answer some questions. So about the backup drive, 30 iterations. Well, let's see how much space that's taking up right now. So my entire folder, well, that's not fair. Hold on, let me exclude the videos. Okay. Excluding the videos with 30 iterations saved, going between PSD and RIF file format, plus reference photos, which aren't very big, and a couple of thumbnails. I have 525 megabytes, which is half of a gigabyte. So that's really not that much data. I'm looking at the wrong camera. I have two cameras here, and usually I'm using the live streaming one, which you can't see. I was looking at the wrong one. 525 megabytes, you know, let's say it gets up to a gigabyte. A gigabyte per painting if it's a really elaborate painting. Not a whole lot of data. If you have a smaller hard drive, you know, could kind of start to become an issue. I have a lot of hard drives. I have 6 terabyte, a couple 4 terabytes. Those are just external drives. A few that are several hundred gigabytes. Then I have quite a few internal drives. So I have a lot of hard drives. I have everything backed up. Not everything, but most everything backed up multiple times. And then I also have like these little thumb drives. This one is 256 gigabytes, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger. I'm sure they make them bigger than this. This is just a quick, fast way to back up stuff. If you don't want to take the time to copy it to an external drive, just pop this in, back up your files, and you have at least something temporary. And then this is the thing about data. It's like data is so inexpensive to store and to back up nowadays. Why wouldn't you just save? You know, like there's some things you'll throw away and some things you'll save. And I could easily go through all of my art projects and delete all of the iterations, knowing that I probably won't go back to them later. It's 99.9% chance I'll never go back to any of those iterations. But on the occasion that later down the road I'm like, oh, well, I want to show off the process of how I painted Stephen Hawking besides the video, you know, maybe somebody has a question, or maybe there's a reason why it would be beneficial to have all of those versions. They're there, and I have them. You know, it's not like, oh, I guess I deleted those to save space, you know, because how much does saving space really matter? Eventually, prices are going to keep coming down on hard drives, and by the time you fill up a hard drive, you're ready to get another one. And so I just try to save most everything, unless it's something I just don't really don't care about. Then I'll throw that stuff away. J Arts asks if Corel Essentials is a good buy. That's a tough question. Corel Painter Essentials is the light version of Corel Painter. I'm using Corel Painter 2018, so Corel Painter Essentials is going to do essentially the same thing, get it? But it has far fewer features, far fewer features. It's in a way kind of handicapped. Reason being is it's kind of more geared towards beginners or people who are just getting into digital art. And there's so much stuff in Corel Painter 2018, the full version, that it can be really overwhelming. So Corel Painter Essentials is just distilled down to just some basic stuff. That way anybody who's new to digital art can jump into it and do some basic stuff. And you can do quite a bit. Like you could probably do most of what I'm doing in my painting, you know, minus a few brushes and techniques and things like that. You could still get a pretty good looking painting out of it. So it's not a bad piece of software. However, if down the road you find that you want to do more advanced stuff, then you would have to buy Corel Painter, the full version. And of course you can get an upgrade from Essentials to the full version, but it might make more sense to get the full version if you can afford it. The other advantage is that you'll be able to follow along with my 1,000 or so tutorials for Corel Painter. You might be able to get by with Corel Painter Essentials on a few things, but for the most part, if you want to be able to follow along with my tutorials, which are the best Corel Painter tutorials out there, maybe even the best digital painting tutorials out there, you know, it makes sense to have the same thing that I have. So JPT says, do I think Krita can be used professionally? Yes, it can be used professionally. I lately have been trying to kind of set it up in a way to where I'm more comfortable using it, and I might try to use it in some more videos since it is a popular and free application. But man, is it frustrating for me to use. Like, and I know it's a good application. It's just some things are just, maybe I'm not as used to it, but yeah, it's frustrating. But it's improved a lot. It's improved a lot. There's some good blenders in there now, and so I feel like it's really giving some of the paid art applications a run for their money. It's not anywhere near the point to where I'm going to stop using Corel Painter and use Krita. Fire Louise says, you are such a good artist, I'm jealous. Do not be jealous. Be inspired, and know that anything I can do, you can do, and you can do better than me. And all you have to do is practice and have dedication and have that desire and just do it. And then good is subjective, you know? I don't know how good you are. And then people might look at your work and think that you're better than me, and you know, people tell me I suck all the time. Like, it's not on a daily basis, but it happens a lot, you know? People think I'm a terrible artist, you know? They're like, how do you even have any subscribers? You're the worst artist I've ever seen. So how you feel about yourself, that's one thing. How people perceive you, that's another. But have confidence in yourself and know that if you're not happy with where you're at now, if you keep practicing, you'll get there. That's all it is. Like, you can do anything you put your mind to, and I know that's you know, a platitude or whatever, you know, put your mind to it and you'll get it. But it's true, and there's a reason why people give that advice. It's very broad, very vague advice, but that's just what it is. That's just what it comes down to, you know. There's no magic video you're going to watch. There's no magic tool that you're going to buy. You can't drink a potion and all of a sudden become an artist. It just takes the work. Okay, what am I going to draw? That's the question for you tonight. I feel like doing a request. I think that's what I'm going to do. I've done a lot of talking. Now it's time to do some drawing. Just out of curiosity, let me see how many people are watching. Okay, there's some people watching. It probably tanked as soon as I started talking and stopped drawing. Fire Luis says happy face. I don't know if that was happy face as a comment to what I said or if that's a request. Goku. Draw my favorite video game character. Okay, I'm going to take a bunch of requests and then maybe we'll combine something. Goku. Never really much of a fan of Dragon Ball, the first, like the original Dragon Ball. Never really my thing. Dragon Ball Z was cool, Dragon Ball GT was cool. I know I'm a nerd. I was never like super deep into it. I got up into about Majin Buu, and then I think that's about when I stopped watching it, because it just became... It was just too much of the, like, too much charging up, and I know that's everybody's, like, thing that they rip on it about, is it's just like... Wait, hold on. And their hair stands on end, and that's like 30 minutes of that. And then after a while, it's just like, man, like... What am I even watching? Basically nothing. So then I kind of dropped off. But, you know, I was into it. It was a cool show. I liked the characters. I think I liked Vegeta the best. Super Saiyan Vegeta. Now you know I'm a nerd. And I know I don't draw a lot of anime, but there are some animes I liked. Outlaw Star was good. Probably my favorite one all around. So you'd be surprised at the things that I'm into. Fire Louise says a happy face. I should draw a happy face. And then F. Lingle says, on this end, only a 512 gigabyte SSD and an incompatible Apple time capsule with 3 terabytes. A disgrace. Based on limited experience, Corel Painter makes my doodles look impressive. Not so with Krita. Yeah, 512 gigabytes is not a lot of storage, but that's the nature of solid-state drives. Solid-state drives, and it very well may be the kind of computer that you have. I don't know. I'm going to assume you probably have a Mac. Solid-state drives are really great for putting your working files on, things that you're actively working on. It's also good for all your program files and things that you want to load very quickly, but they're not meant for storage, like long-term storage. For long-term storage, you're going to want an external drive or something with a spinning disk, just your traditional IDE hard drive. Those are a lot cheaper per gigabyte, and they hold up a lot better in the long run. You can go to Costco and get, you know, I don't know where you live, but Costco has some pretty good deals on external drives. I got a good hub. It's like 6 terabytes, and I want to say it was under $200 or so. It's probably like 180 or something. It wasn't very much. It's a Seagate, so incompatible time capsule. That's too bad, because 3 terabytes is a good chunk of storage. Quick, simple, happy face, 3 lines. Okay. I'm going to try to draw the best possible smiley face that I can draw. So here we go. I'm going to select the scratchboard tool. I'm going to turn off damping so that there is no smoothing. Here we go. Oh, well, pretty good for a circle. Alright, there you go. Smiley face. I was hoping I could draw a perfect circle in one go, but I can't. I can draw some pretty damn good circles, though, I gotta say. Whoops, I bumped my microphone. I have a video on drawing circles if you want to know how to draw circles. But, you know, that's not bad. It's not a perfect circle, but not everybody wants perfect circles when you're freehand drawing them. JPT says this needs to be in a museum. Okay, lots of comments here. Let me catch up on these. F. Langle's on an ancient iMac and Mobile Studio Pro 16 fully loaded. Awesome. So that's where the SSD comes in. Not much you can do about that on the Mobile Studio Pro. I would just keep whatever you're working on there, and then dump everything that's just storage, completed art onto an external hard drive. And of course, USB-C or USB 3.0. I don't know if they make USB-C speed, high-speed USB-C hard drives yet. They probably do, but that would be something to keep in mind. JArt says, do a game on my PC. Not really. I was playing Secret of Mana HD because that's one of the few, like, I'm into retro games, and they remade that. It was a Super Nintendo game, and for a while I was kind of trying to live stream it on my channel, but man, oh man, did people really, really not like that, because I looked at my stats later, and I got a lot of unsubscribes from doing that. I figured, like, hey, it's my channel. I'm busting my butt every week to make videos for people for free. The least I should be able to do is if I want to stream some games to be able to do that. You don't have to watch me stream the game, but you also don't have to unsubscribe from my channel because I played a game. So I decided I'm just not going to do that anymore. It stinks that that's how it has to be, that I can't do what I want on my channel, but I understand it makes sense. It's like, you subscribe, you don't really know much about me, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, this guy's playing video games all the time? What's going on here? I'm trying to learn about art. So, it makes sense. Rafia's here. They've been on my live streams before. I may have forgotten, but this streams helps me a lot. Thank you, Rafia. I'm glad I'm able to help, and welcome back. Good to see you again. JPT says, no, you deleted it. I did. It's gone forever, and I've probably done more undos, and I can't get it back. Is there a way to use stabilizers while doing line art on Photoshop? Yes, if you have Photoshop CC 2018, there is stabilization. I'm not going to walk you through doing it in this live stream, but you can search my channel for Photoshop stabilization, or Photoshop smoothing, as it's called there. And I have a video that will teach you how to do that. Okay, so my favorite video game character is what JArts wants me to draw. I need to think about that. Who's my favorite video game character? I'm one of those people, and raise your hand if you're the same way. When somebody asks you what your favorite something is, your favorite food, your favorite band, you're like, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to make a choice because there's so many different video game characters that I like. It would be hard to pick one, you know? I'm going to have to think about that. So I guess I'm going to do Goku here, because that's the other request that I haven't done yet. Shindal says, hello from Argentina. Good to see you, Shindal. Rafia says, you have a video on everything. I do. I have quite a lot of videos. You'd be amazed at, like, the list I have of videos that I haven't even made yet either. It's ridiculous. Okay, Goku. So, I am by no means an expert at drawing Goku or Dragon Ball Z. I don't think I've ever tried to draw Dragon Ball Z characters. So we'll see how this goes. Got my Goku reference photo here. Start with a sketch. Okay. Let me pop. Oh. I guess I can stay here now. I was gonna hide myself. I'm just gonna move my reference to a different monitor here. Okay, so let's just start here. So Goku is, let's see, it's about 7.5 or 8 heads high. That's what I was doing when I was squinting my eyes. You ever see those old-timey things with the artists who are like, they're going like that, or they're holding up their paintbrush? You use that as a unit of measurement. Like, here's my head. You know, my head is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You know, however many pen widths, that's how you kind of estimate. And surprisingly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5 is about superhero height. I guess we're not counting his hair. If we're counting his hair, he's taller than that. Okay, and we got beefy neck here. I'm using mirror painting mode here. Saves me some time. It's pretty tiny feet, I have to say. Let's try to catch up on comments here too real quick. Rafia says, when I started drawing, I used Fire Alpaca. Now I use Photoshop or Sai, even Clip Studio sometimes, and when I look back, I realize Fire Alpaca wasn't as bad, I just didn't know how to make it work. Fire Alpaca is a little limited, I find. So is Paint Tool Sai. Photoshop, with the addition of Kyle T. Webster, that's who it is. With all those brushes that were added, you can actually do quite a bit more with Photoshop, although I still think the brushes are kind of too dab-based. So out of all those options, you probably would be able to do quite a bit with Photoshop, but Paint Tool Sai and Fire Alpaca also have some features that Photoshop doesn't. They're all pretty good, though. JR says, I feel like I really need to practice figure drawing, but I have no idea on how to do so. Got to start with primitive shapes. You know, like what am I doing here? Arm is a cylinder. I mean, I'm obviously drawing from a reference photo, but I know the primitive shapes. You know, the head is a spherical shape. The body is kind of a cube. The arms are cylinders. Learn primitive shapes, because everything that you can draw, including human anatomy, are all combinations of primitive shapes. And then once you've learned that, then you need to learn anatomy, and you know, anatomy is a bit more complex. If you start with simplified anatomy, it's not a big deal, and then work your way up to more detailed stuff like musculature, and you know, expand upon that a bit. But at a minimum, you have to know primitive shapes and basic human anatomy. What I find really has helped me the most is just getting like a guide to drawing maybe manga or comic books, because they really break it down into simplified forms. There's a book called Drawing the Marvel Way, or if you just kind of study how to draw superhero characters, all of those many of those artists use a particular formula, very similar to what I'm doing here. Once you master that, you will be a lot better at drawing people or figures. Fire Louise says Corel Painter Essentials are Aftershot. Aftershot, as Gel Art, or as J Art says, is mostly a photo editing program. So yeah, you wouldn't want to get Aftershot for trying to draw. Aftershot is basically Photoshop and kind of like Lightroom mixed together. So definitely Corel. And if you're getting the Intuos, the new 2018 Intuos, it comes bundled with Clip Studio Paint, Aftershot, or Corel Painter Essentials. You know, Clip Studio Paint can do quite a bit more. I don't know, like it's kind of, it could go either way with Clip Studio Paint or Corel Painter Essentials. There's a lot that Clip Studio Paint can do that Corel Painter Essentials can't, and vice versa. Corel Painter Essentials, I believe, is a permanent license, whereas Clip Studio Paint, I think, is like a 1.5-year license, and then it expires. So that's something to keep in mind. Rafia says, when I draw, I usually make 3 layers of sketches, one with the basic line figures, then shapes, then the base sketch of what I want to draw. It takes a lot of time. But that's good. That's a good way to do it. And that's kind of what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do a base sketch. I might refine it a bit. And then I'll do the inking, and then I'll do the color. Ez is here. Good to see you, Ez. F. Lingle says, don't dissect a live model into primitive shapes, though. Definitely not. You want to be carving up any people. And Fire Louise says, yeah, I'm getting the new Intuos. Okay, so let's continue on. I just need to see if there's anything else here that needs my attention. There's a bit of a design going along the bottom of the feet. I might as well draw that in. And there's weird little bands around the feet here with little bows. That's kind of cute. I never noticed those before. Such a badass with his bows. But, you know, that's how you know you're a badass, when you can have cute little bows on your shoes and no one will mess with you. This background stuff I can delete too. Gotta have the wristbands, or the gauntlets, or whatever they are. I guess they're wristbands. Interesting way they drew the fists here. Never really been much of a muscle artist. A lot of people like to draw a lot of muscles. I've just never really been that into, like, drawn beefy dudes. I've drawn some superheroes, like I was really into comic books. But I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's kind of overdone. I'd rather draw more realistic depictions of people than draw overly muscular people, but that's just me. You know, I thought this would be easy, but this is ending up being a pretty complex drawing. It's got a nice scowl going on. His chin needs to be a little bit pointier. It's looking like, oh man, what's that guy's name? The bald guy. Let's see if I can remember. I can't. I can't remember the bald guy's name. What's the bald guy's name? That's who he looks like right now. Help me out here, Dragon Ball Z people. Krillin, that's what it is. Shendel says Johnny Sins. Efflingle says Uncle Fester. Jarrett says Elmer Fudd. You guys are funny. Those are bald guys for sure. It's like, there's probably a lot of you watching who have absolutely zero interest in Dragon Ball Z. Probably just like, what are you even talking about? It's interesting where they put all these different lines and things. I mean, obviously there's a reason why, but very specific. You know, cartoon characters, especially, or cartoon or manga or anime characters, they all kind of have a formula, so they look the same, or they're consistent. So that's, I guess, what I'm referring to. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure that I've got all of the symmetry. I think I do. So now I can turn off mirror painting. I can start adding in the hair. And you're just making these observations about where everything comes out. I'm looking at the bottom of the ear here. That's where the hair kind of comes out. And then we need to make this move down a bit. You're too tall, Goku. I'm just trying to estimate the volume of the hair here by doing that. There's a couple of random little hairs that stick out. That's kind of an interesting effect. Completely different drawing style than what I was doing earlier with the Stephen Hawking. But it just shows that, you know, if you care to, you can draw pretty much anything. Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to be the best Goku in the world, because there's probably, I mean, I know for a fact there's a lot of people who can draw way better Goku than me. And again, it comes down to interest. You know, I have some interest in Dragon Ball Z, or had. I mean, I can't say I dislike it or anything, but I just, I'm probably not gonna. You're not gonna see me spending much time drawing Dragon Ball Z or watching it. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate it and that I didn't enjoy it, but people who are much more interested in it will definitely do a better job because they understand all the different nuances of Dragon Ball Z style and the characters. And I feel like the hair might be a bit too tall. Not terribly difficult to fix though. Okay. I'm gonna do this too. I don't need all this extra canvas. Let's go ahead and crop it off. Alright, we're not doing too bad. I think the eyes are perhaps a bit too close together. Oops. Back up a bit here. There we go. And then the nose has this little shadow on the side. It's not too bad, not looking too bad. And again, this is my first time ever drawing Goku. I am drawing from a reference photo. I can't imagine what it would look like if I was trying to draw it from imagination. It would probably be pretty terrible. I'm feeling good though. Feeling good about it. So there are a lot of details here that I don't know that I want to spend a whole lot of time on. So some of this stuff I might kind of try to simplify. Mainly like all these folds and stuff and the clothes. Okay. Have that hair kind of come over the eyebrow just a bit. I'll try to catch up on comments here too before I move on to the next step. So apparently somebody who got blocked has nothing better to do than come back under a different name. And they're back. They sure showed us. Oh man, they showed us. They came back under a different name. Oh gee, what am I gonna do? I can't possibly just hide this user on the channel. Oh, but I did. Okay, so now they're gone. And now they'll have to come back under their third YouTube account. That showed them. JR says, what do trolls get out of doing stuff like this? Think about how much you enjoy making art. That's what trolls get out of being turds. They like to smell their own turd stink by being turds. They like the smell of their own farts, essentially. So they like being trolls. Let's see. Fire says, do I know what Futurama is? Yes, I do. It's their favorite show ever, and they have so many drawings of it. I kind of dropped off on Futurama. I watched a fair amount of it, but I don't know. It's just some things go. There's just too much of some things, you know. I appreciate back in the day when you had a limited amount of series of cartoons. That was it. It's done. You start to get into too many series, and it just starts to lose its appeal. As said, why did I cut my hair? I just decided that I didn't want to have long hair anymore, and I cut it. The reason why I had long hair is because I decided I didn't want to have short hair anymore, and so I grew it out. It's just a constant battle between being too distracted by my hair. It's an interesting thing. I know it sounds really vain, and it's really not intended to be that way. It's just hair is one of those things where, I don't know, it can be a burden, you know, like what do you do with your hair? Like maybe you're bald, maybe you're like Elmer Fudd or Krillin or Uncle Fester, and it's not a big deal. But if you're like Goku, you got all this stuff sticking out everywhere. Like you got to sculpt it and make it right, otherwise it's gonna look weird. I kill a lot of time doing that and thinking about that, among other things that people think about. And sometimes I feel like having long hair is a better solution, because then I don't have to like long hair seems easier, and then later short hair seems easier. I don't know, it's something that I'm obsessed with to some degree, and I have to keep modifying it, and I can't just leave it alone. It'd be great if I could just have like the haircut and just stick with that, but I don't know. I'm getting too much into Aaron's personal life here and his hair. I don't know. It's weird. I just want short hair now, so shorter hair. So it doesn't really matter to me what people think. I'm not doing it, you know, to please anybody other than myself. It takes a certain amount of dedication to grow your hair out. It takes a certain amount of dedication to cut it. And I think to be able to make those decisions, or have that dedication, or to pursue a goal, whether it's cutting your hair or growing your hair, those are all good traits to have, and to be able to do that. And you can apply that to other things too, besides hair. JPT says the shirt is too blocky. It is a little blocky, I agree. Let's fix that. It needs these little... See, it's these little things that you don't see till it's too late. And then this is kind of like a tucked in kind of thing. That's the technical name, tucked in kind of thing. Hopefully that helps. Alright. Well, I think time kind of snuck up on me. It's already 9:35, and I was only going to go till 9:30. I would really like to add ink to this and color, but that would probably take me quite a bit longer. I should have talked less and done more drawing, but you know what? I got a good sketch of Goku, and I will save this, and I will come back to it later in another live stream. I wish I could finish it tonight, but I can't, so... I'm going to catch up on the last few comments here. JR says, I'm curious to know, do you prefer sketching traditionally as you did a few years back? I don't know. Sketching traditionally versus sketching digitally. I think it's about the same, really. Sketching is sketching. I don't know that there's advantages and disadvantages. I would say for sketching there's probably more advantages to doing it digitally because you can easily make corrections. It's a pain in the butt to erase pencil off of paper, especially when you're not a light sketcher like me. So I would say I probably prefer doing it digitally because it gives me more of a chance to make the sketch perfect without a whole lot of extra messy work of erasing and redrawing. It's more efficient. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a night or a day, depending on where you're at. If you enjoyed this live stream and you want to show your appreciation or just, give me a little bit of mojo or a little bit of thanks, definitely click that super chat button down there at the bottom of your chat with the $sign. Super chat me $1, $2, $3, $100, $10,000 if you got it. I'm totally kidding. But or check out patreon.com/Aaron Rutten. If you for some reason are watching this and haven't subscribed to my channel, definitely do that because that's the best way to know when I'm going to be doing live streams, if I happen to schedule it ahead of time or if I just spontaneously live stream. And you'll get notifications if you click the bell icon when I release new videos, which I do 4 times each week. JPT says, it's alright, you deserve a break. Raffia says, you deserve some rest. Take care. Thank you, Raffia. Thank you, JPT. So I am going to go ahead and enjoy the rest of my night and get some rest. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I had a lot of fun drawing with you and talking with you, answering your questions, as always. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.